Hey, thanks for tuning in to watch this episode of Chatting with Chandy. I just wanted to let you know that this episode is about mental health, specifically living with anorexia, and my guest Grace will be sharing her lived experience and going into a bit of detail about things that have happened to her and the impact it had on her life. So if you don't feel like this is the right time for you to watch this episode, please come back at a later date, and remember to look after yourself because your mental health matters. A bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Grace. I used to be a competitive gymnast, but in lockdown, I started with anorexia, and now I've started an Instagram and a campaign for BMI to be removed for treatment. And yeah.
So obviously that's quite a difficult situation to go through.
Yeah.
What was it like for you, and why do you feel so passionate about helping other people?
So I started with body image issues when I was about 10. So quite a young age to deal with like low confidence, low self-esteem, all that stuff. And sort of being a gymnast, I'd always had a muscly build, so I never really thought like, oh well, I all the stereotypes of eating disorders. I thought you have to be really thin, you have to sort of that stereotype which everybody sort of realizes. And so when I started suffering with it, I was like, oh, well, I don't think I can get the help because of that, which obviously in lockdown it got quite bad. I went away to uni, it went downhill. And so when I was quite in denial of struggling, obviously. And it was sort of my mum who said, no, there's something wrong with this, because it sort of went from a little whisper in my head to everything was taken out of my control. It was like I was like a puppet for the eating disorder. In the space of 2 months, it sort of went from, yeah, I could override it a little bit to I couldn't do anything, and sort of every thought was the eating disorder. Sort of everything I was thinking about was calories, exercise, and sleep, and that was it. My whole routine just revolved around that, and sort of I isolated myself away from everybody, my family, my boyfriend, my friends, just everything was just taken away from me, and it wasn't in my control. It was sort of, I were a bit like upset obviously about it, because I was like, I've not done anything and everything's been taken away. And I went for the help obviously at the doctors, and because my BMI, obviously it said I was healthy, and I got turned away. So that was in November 2022. February, I went to A&E because my heart rate dropped low. I was very tired, fatigued, couldn't do anything. I was put onto a ward as precaution. But again, because my BMI said I was okay, I was sent home again. And from that point, I was like, that stereotype again. I thought I have to lose more weight, very wrongly, because you shouldn't have to lose any more weight at all. I then lost more weight, and I was like, something needs to change, because my BMI has never been underweight. Even when I was, say, in a hospital bed on complete bed rest and complete bed rest for a month, at that point, for it to still say that I was healthy, it's, yeah, I just want to raise awareness that it's not accurate, and that treatment shouldn't be like that measure shouldn't be used for the treatment of eating disorders. For something so serious, it's so inaccurate. So yeah.
And that must have, that moment when you're having those conversations with healthcare professionals and they're telling you everything's fine, but you know it's not. Does that,
Mm-hmm.
obviously it must fill you with a lot of, like, not lack of confidence in that you're
Yeah,
getting the right support that you need at that moment?
that's it. Yeah, because I just didn't feel like I was listened to, really. Sort of, I was telling them everything's been taken out of my control, everything's gone. Like, I wasn't myself. Like, I genuinely felt like I was like a puppet, and I'd gone away, and I was just being controlled by this voice in my head that was just getting stronger and stronger. So for me to then tell them, and them to say, oh, but because your weight's not staying the same, like, it, yeah, it really didn't fill me with confidence.
And just following you on social media, you're quite an open person about what you've been through and like your learning and what you're trying to teach other people. What have, is that, what's that process like? How do you, does it, do you think that like posting on social media comes naturally, or do you think there's still that, if you, does that, I would be worried about sharing stuff
and I like
Yeah.
on social media. So how does that make you feel?
At the beginning, I was that first TikTok that I made of recovering is to start now. I was really worried because I was like, first of all, I thought I was going to be judged by people that I knew, which crazy. I think that might have been a bit of a like low self-confidence sort of thoughts, like not being worthy. But yeah, my first thought was like, oh, people are going to judge me. And yeah, I still do get quite anxious every time I post. I'm like, Mom, is this okay? I sort of get reassurance, but yeah, I really do enjoy it. Like the being open, and a lot of people have messaged me like, you're really helping me, and I think that's what keeps me going with it and being so open, because I know when I was struggling, I've looked at other influencers like anorexia and Ro Mitchell and stuff. Their posts have really helped me, but I was always looking for somebody who was saying like going through the same process as I was, and I could never find that. And so trying to be open so that somebody feels like they've always like got a friend with them who's going through the same thing.
And being that advocate for someone who is in your situation.
Yeah, that's it.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned a little bit there about the response from people. How have your family and friends taken this? Have they, obviously, I know I've seen your mum's posts on Facebook and stuff, and
Yeah.
like, how's your community around you responded to what you're experiencing?
Like, I didn't think that they'd respond as well. I sort of thought that people would be like, oh, it might grow a bit. But yeah, people around me have been really supportive. My friends all like my stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, we'll like it. And today obviously I posted my first YouTube video of the day that I stopped counting calories, and all my friends was like, oh, we'll go subscribe and stuff. So yeah, they've all been really supportive. My nan's tried to go on Instagram, but she can't. She doesn't know how to make an account, so but she's tried.
And obviously you started a petition to challenge the stigma and stuff. What are some of the misconceptions that you think surround eating disorders?
Yeah, I think the biggest stereotype is that you have to be extremely underweight to have an eating disorder, or you have to be underweight to have an eating disorder. And I just think eating disorders are mental disorders, not weight disorders. And so I try and overcome that on social media with the BMI thing, because I think the weight is just a consequence, because somebody could be at a bigger weight and be struggling, and somebody could be at a lower weight before they're struggling. So the person at a lower will always be at a lower weight than the person who was bigger than they were struggling. So I think with the being underweight and stuff, yeah, it just needs to be overcome, because it's just a consequence, not a determinant as to whether you're struggling or not. Yeah.
And what are your hopes for the future with the petition and with the work you're doing now?
I hope it can get to Parliament. I mean, we've got like 5,000 more signatures to go to get a response. I think it has to get 100,000 to go to Parliament. But hopefully it can get a response, or even just raise awareness, because I don't know if this will come from my petition or just in general, people, if health care and eating disorder services are realising, but a few services have actually stopped using BMI now. Yeah. So the service that I'm under, Derbyshire Eating Disorder Service, they're moving away from BMI. So yeah, that's a step forward. A few services have said that they're stopping. So yeah, hopefully it can just not use it as a determinant, or yeah, I hope that they can find a more accurate measure of health, sort of maybe using muscle mass in the determinant, or just a way that's not just height and weight, sort of more accurate measures.
And in your experience, what are some of the emotional like challenges that you face that you think you want people to know about, so that when they're experiencing it or when they see someone experiencing it, they can look out for those signs and act and be that person to signpost them to the right support?
I think the first thing that happened with me, to like on the outside, obviously inside I was really dealing with body dysmorphia. Sort of, I'd walk down a street and I'd be, say, at the beginning of the street, I'd feel okay. And then 10 minutes later, I could look at myself and I'd be like, oh my God, I've gained loads of weight. So it'd go from one extreme to the other. And it's just your mind completely, yeah, tricking you. And I dealt with a lot of comparison, sort of, even though everybody's different and everybody's built up of loads of different DNA and genes, I'd always compare myself to other people, and that was one of the biggest first things, whether that's comparing how I looked and also what I ate to other people. But I'd say on the outside, probably the isolating away from everybody as the eating disorder took control, because obviously it wants to be in a routine of exercise and sleep. You go very much into survival mode where your brain of the eating disorder, it just can think about those two things and eating the minimum amount of calories that you can. It just really takes control. So I very much isolated myself away from everybody. I was at uni at the time, obviously, and I'd gone from on Freshers Week. Before, I was struggling there with comparison, but I weren't sort of acting on it. It was that whisper in my head, which I'd been struggling with throughout 3 years. But it was sort of start of October, I'd say, where it became it took control. It became a scream rather than a whisper, and that was at the point where I stopped going out, or I'd stopped staying in the kitchen with my friends at uni, because I just completely isolate myself away. And
What do you do to look after yourself now? Obviously, I've seen on your social media that you've just stopped one of your elements of care. I think it was counselling or seeing as. So how do you look after yourself, and what's your relationship like now with your mental health?
So it's very up and down. I'd say that. So I'm under the eating disorder service still with my team. I have a therapist weekly, a dietitian every 2 weeks, my doctors every 6 weeks, and then I also have a peer support work which is weekly. So they sort of take control of me looking after myself and make sure that I am. But I'd say personally, I do on my Instagram, I do that self-care diaries, which is I write down every week a way that I've showed up for myself, sort of, and that generally is journaling. I do a lot of that all the time, sort of. If a thought comes into my head, rather than just let it weigh, I just write it down, and then it's sort of, I feel like it gets it out rather than keeping it inside. So that's a big thing that I do. I've just ordered a personalised diary from Papier. I think it's Papier. Yeah, I've ordered one of them. So that's a big thing. I'd say meditation. I've done a lot of that, sort of trying to disconnect from them thoughts and sort of grounding myself a lot, rather than letting myself get so held up and sort of in my head with it all. I sort of try and work on grounding myself and doing a lot of that. Obviously, I'm allowed to go for a 15-minute walk now, which has been really helpful, actually, especially with the warm weather. So walking in nature is a big thing. Obviously, before with the eating disorder, it was very eating disorder driven. My walks, I'd walk to burn calories, or I'd walk to change my body in a certain way, or just to do a compulsion. Whereas now I very much focus on, if I want to go on a walk, is it because I want to get outside, or is it because I don't feel like I've moved enough? If it isn't because I've moved enough, then I'll journal those thoughts and I'll put a meditation on, and I'll try and process that emotion and overcome it in that way. But if it generally is that I just want to get out and sort of clear my head, then I'll be like, right, we'll go and do a mindful walk, and my 15-minute walk.
You said something earlier about showing up for yourself, and I really like that. Do you want to talk a bit more about that? Where'd that come from? Do you think you've gone from, because it sounds like you've been on a really reflective journey?
I mean, I've suffered with, obviously, mental health since I was 8, being diagnosed with OCD then. And so I think since that point, I've had I was at CAMS when I was 8, and I've had different therapies, but I've never really clicked until obviously this therapy. And I think for the past 10 years, I've not really taken care of my mental health. I've sort of acted like a plaster on my mental health, you know what I mean? Sort of, I've known it's there, but I've just done the coping mechanisms, which aren't really healthy, sort of the eating disorder coping mechanisms, or trying to get reassurance from my OCD rather than dealing with why I'm actually worrying about certain things. And so now I've gone from not showing up and sort of not just sort of pushing it to the side and thinking I'll deal with it later. Then now I'm like, because it's affected my health, it's come to light that, like, I want to overcome it, and I want to show up for myself and heal and rewire my brain to be at a certain point where I can live a life that I want to live. And yeah, showing up for myself now is trying to find new coping mechanisms, which I'm sharing weekly about. Yeah, sort of it's very much a process that I'm trying to like. It's a long process, I think. It's got a lot of ups and downs, but yeah, finding new coping and trying to find who I am away from the eating disorder, I think, and who I am away from the girl with OCD. That's yeah, and I think all of this work that I'm doing is helping me find me again.
And who are your role models?
Ooh. Probably if it was celebrities, I'd say anorexia. She's a big role model for me. I managed to meet her at the weekend, which was a big.
What was that like? I know
I
sometimes when you meet your heroes or your idols, like it can feel quite different in person.
Yeah, I was really nervous before. I was so nervous. I was like shaking, but oh, it was so good. She generally makes every person feel like she's their best friend. Like she had a conversation because it was an event and there were 30 tickets, so 30 people managed to meet her. And it was just so good. Like she just had time for every single person, which was so good. And I managed to have I'd say about an hour just talking. It was really good, really good. And yeah, and also I'd say probably her. And also, if I'm talking about like people around me, my mum, definitely my mum. Yeah, she's stuck with me through it all, and I really look up to her.
And my final question, if you could have a time machine and go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd probably say at that point where I started struggling, sort of at 10, I'd say at that point, you don't need to change yourself. You fit in, you are enough. Because I think that was a big thing. I didn't feel like I fitted in. I didn't feel like I was enough at that age. And so I'd just say, yeah, you are enough. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for chatting to me today, Grace.
Thank you so much.
So what does love mean to you? First, I guess like self-love, what does that mean? And also, what does love in general mean to you?
Yeah, so self-love. What is self-love? That's such a good question. The number one thing that comes to mind for me with self-love is not judging yourself for not being perfect, not judging yourself for sometimes, not doing a physio or drinking a little bit too much or, having negative thoughts. It's sitting with the feelings, accepting them, and committing to go on a journey with yourself to learn about you and to protect them, and to always have their best interest at heart.